Section 11. You leave the rooftop behind, descending a narrow stairwell tucked between walls that still radiate a touch of daytime heat. The windcatchers fade from view, but the chill they summoned clings to you like a second skin. You step out into the wider city now, walking quietly through hushed streets under moonlight. But tonight, your journey stretches beyond Persia. For all their brilliance, the Persians weren't the only ones chasing cold comfort in hot lands. As you drift through the dreaming village, you slip into stories from across the ancient world, civilizations locked in a kind of Cold War, minus the missiles and much more obsessed with sorbet. To the west, Egypt. The pharaohs, not to be outdone by Persian nobles sipping faluda, also cherished the cold. You walk now along the banks of the Nile, or maybe just a memory of it. Here, wealthy Egyptians stored their chilled water and drinks in tall earthen jars, left to cool at night and buried by day. They didn't build Yakhchals, but they had their own tricks: thick mud brick homes, high ceilings, shaded courtyards. And rumor has it that pharaohs were served chilled wine cooled with imported snow. Yes, imported. From distant mountains, sometimes even from Syria. Try putting that on your Uber Eats order. Historians still argue whether this ice delivery system was widespread or just reserved for the divine and very rich. But scrolls mention it, poems whisper it, and somewhere out there, a donkey definitely carried a cube of snow 300 miles. To the east, India. The Mughal emperors, especially during the early modern period, took cooling to theatrical extremes. You wander now through the foggy edges of their story, glimpsing jeweled palaces with entire ice houses underground. They, too, harvested snow from the Himalayas, packed it in straw, and carted it to Delhi and Agra. In the sweltering summers, it was used to cool drinks, soothe skin, and impress visitors. And oh, the sorbets. Mango pulp mixed with snow, rosewater slushies, and saffron ice creams. Some say Emperor Akbar had a literal snow service, an elite team dedicated to ensuring his desserts were chilled to perfection. You grin, imagining his advisor nervously weighing a mango cube. Too warm, Your Majesty? Shall I try the 3 a.m. batch instead? Now south, to the Arabian Peninsula. Nomads didn't have yakhchals or ice houses, but they understood thermal logic like survival depended on it, because it did. Tents were layered to trap air. Water skins were made of goat hide, kept in the shade, and cooled through slow evaporation. Even today in desert villages, people wrap water jugs in wet cloth and let the breeze do the rest. You pass a low-slung Bedouin tent in your mind's eye. There's a metal pitcher inside, cool to the touch, sitting in a shallow dish of sand. A boy lifts the lid, pours out a stream of water, and grins as the shock of cool hits his tongue. No ice, just ingenuity. A fringe detail for your travelogue? In ancient Mesopotamia, some temples used ice symbolically to represent purity. A cube of frozen water, even one that melted in minutes, could be considered sacred. And finally, Rome. Because of course Rome got involved. You hear the faint echoes of togas rustling, sandals scraping marble. Wealthy Romans paid insane sums to import snow from the Alps, hauled in straw-lined carts down treacherous roads, all so someone could drizzle honey over it and call it a refreshing midday treat. They didn't refrigerate in bulk, but they loved showing off with chilled delicacies at feasts. Some Romans even had underground pits, knives, used to store snow year-round. Historians still argue whether these were widespread innovations or just signs of upper-class excess. Either way, the obsession was real. So now, here you are, drifting through an imaginary global banquet. Persians with their yakhchals, Egyptians with their buried jars, Mughals with Himalayan snow, Bedouins with goatskin logic, and Romans showing off with frozen honey drizzle. All of them chasing cold. not just to survive, but to enjoy, to elevate daily life with a chill, to impress, to soothe, to create moments of wonder. In a world where fire was easy, but ice was rare, cold became magic. You return now to the Persian streets beneath your feet. The Yakhchal is still there, the wind still moves, and the quiet competition among ancient civilizations fades, leaving only the breeze and a whisper. What's colder than cold? Answer: ice, shared across empires, preserved in stone. Section 12. The air is still, but never silent. You begin walking again, this time toward the edge of town, where firelight dances in low flickers across stone. There's a different mood here, calmer, slower, and somehow older. You're entering a sacred space, one not for cold drinks or architectural marvels, but for something deeper. You find yourself inside a small Zoroastrian temple, simple, circular, walled-in, sun-baked mud brick. In the center, a flame burns steadily in a copper brazier. The priest, a man in white robes with ash-smudged fingers and a voice like dry silk, nods at you without surprise, as if he's been expecting you. Maybe he has. That's how dreams work. You sit cross-legged across from him, and for a long while, neither of you speaks. Then he says, "We are born in heat. But truth, my friend, travels on the wind. This isn't just metaphor. In Zoroastrian belief, fire is sacred, but not because it burns, because it illuminates. And cold? Cold was not feared, not cursed. It was balance. A reminder of night after day, silence after sound, rest after fire. The dualism of Persian spirituality, of Asha and Druj, truth and lie, heat and cold, wasn't about good versus evil in the modern sense. It was about harmony. And here, in this temple warmed by fire yet surrounded by a desert that births ice in the night, you feel that balance everywhere. The priest walks to a side shelf and lifts a small jar. He opens it, and the scent of dried roses and camphor floods the space. He waves the lid gently, wafting the scent toward the flame. This was once used as a purification mixture, cooling and calming in contrast to the fire's clarity. Fringe detail. Zoroastrian priests were known to keep rooms beneath their fire temples filled with snow or chilled water, not to cool the flame, but to keep ritual balance. Symbolic refrigeration, if you will. Historians still argue whether such practices were widespread or more regional, but fragments of texts mention snow being used in funerary rites and healing ceremonies, sometimes even stored in sacred pits similar to the Yakhchals, but never for mundane use. You follow the priest into a side chamber, a dim, circular space beneath the earth, lined with shelves. Not wine or oil here. Instead, scrolls, dried herbs, small clay idols, and in one corner, a shallow stone basin, half filled with water so cold it's gathered a film of condensation on the surface. This, he says, is the breath of mountains. You believe him. He dips his fingers into the water and traces a line across his forehead, then gestures for you to do the same. You do. The chill is electric, shocking against your skin, but it fades quickly, leaving a tingling peace. It's not about temperature, it's about awakening. You sit again and the flame flickers behind you, casting shadows against the wall. The priest explains, gently without preaching, that fire and ice, heat and cold, action and stillness all belong to the same cosmic rhythm. You sleep, he says, so that you may rise. You chill the drink, so you may taste its truth. Outside, a wind picks up. The air flows down into the temple through a slit in the ceiling, a kind of spiritual wind catcher. You feel it brush your shoulder, then twist up toward the flame, dancing in its light. You smile. The breeze has learned the choreography. And just when you think the moment couldn't get more surreal, the priest hands you a fig. Perfectly ripe, cold to the touch, pulled from a storage pit beneath the floor. You bite into it. It's sweet, soft, and unexpectedly cool. The temple, it seems, also knows how to refrigerate. You stay there a while longer. Time slows. The flame flickers. The breeze hums. The stone under your palms feels ancient, but not unfriendly. As you rise to leave, the priest gives you one last gift, a small pouch of dried herbs and salt pressed into a wax-sealed bundle. For balance, he says, for when the heat returns. Outside, the desert air greets you again, not hot, not cold, just there, waiting. And behind you, the sacred flame and the secret coolness of this temple carry on, keeping the world in quiet balance. Section 13. The temple fades behind you, swallowed by the shadows of the sleeping desert. The path ahead narrows, flanked by low garden walls and stacked bundles of herbs drying in the crisp night air. Somewhere nearby, water trickles softly. Kanat-fed, you suspect. But your steps are heavier now, slower. There's something about ancient rituals and sacred figs that really tugs the eyelids downward. And yet, the journey isn't quite done. You round a corner and find yourself standing before a long, low building made of plastered stone. The air around it is different, tinged with smoke, eucalyptus, and a ghost of something bitter. You're in a healing house now, a place where medicine, magic, and refrigeration all converge. You step inside and are greeted by a middle-aged woman, grinding dried pomegranate rind in a mortar. She doesn't look up, just gestures for you to sit. Around the room, you see jars, hundreds of them, stacked on narrow wooden shelves, labeled in old Persian script. The room hums with potential. But what catches your eye is a stone-lined pit in the far corner, covered with heavy cloth and weighted down with a brass lid. The woman walks over, lifts the lid with a practiced hand, and a breath of cold air sighs into the room. Inside, several clay jars sit nestled in crushed straw and chunks of ice. Each jar is tagged with symbols. Different conditions, maybe? You lean closer. One holds what looks like ground poppy and milk. Another contains a honey-thick concoction of crushed dates and something sharp, maybe vinegar or lime. These aren't dessert ingredients. These are early prescriptions. In ancient Persia, medicine was deeply tied to balance, hot and cold, dry and wet. A feverish child? Cool their body. A melancholic spirit? Chill the liver. A ruler with a headache? Shaved snow mixed with basil water and saffron. Served cold. Carefully. By someone trusted. Historians still argue whether these medicinal uses of ice and snow were standard or more elite exclusive, but Zoroastrian and later Islamic Persian texts mention the importance of temperature in both diagnosis and treatment. They didn't just treat symptoms, they moderated the climate of the body. The woman dips a ladle into a jar, pours a small amount into a silver cup, and hands it to you. It's thick, sweet, and biting. Chilled syrup of quince, mint, and vinegar. For the breath, she says. You nod, though your breath's already pretty happy. Fringe fact for your sleepy scroll. Persian physicians like Avicenna, yes, that Avicenna, wrote extensively about temperature's role in healing. He even detailed how snow-packed clay flasks should be used to calm the humors, which, frankly, sounds like a medieval version of putting a drama queen in a cold shower. You sip again, and the syrup works its slow, curious magic. The healer shows you a rolled parchment listing treatments by season. Summer? Figs and barley water, served cool. Winter? Ginger syrup, slightly warmed. Spring? Whatever is green and has not annoyed you. You smile. practical. In the corner, a small child sleeps on a cot, a damp cloth on his forehead. Next to him, a flask of chilled rosewater rests in a ceramic holder designed to stay cool for hours. The room isn't air-conditioned, but it breathes. The walls are thick, the windows small. Somewhere above, a wind catcher murmurs. You begin to realize just how much of this culture, of this civilization, rested on its mastery of temperature. Not just for comfort or food, but for health, for balance, for survival. You thank the woman, and she hands you a small cloth pouch, dried lemon rind, thyme, and something floral. Inhale when tired, she says. Also good after wine. You pocket it, because why not? Outside, the stars have shifted again. You've been walking these ancient paths for what feels like days, but has only been hours, maybe minutes. Time slips easily here, like ice in a warm hand. You glance back once more. The healing house glows faintly, a beacon of quiet science and faith. Inside, cold preserves more than just ingredients. It preserves wellness. And, if you're lucky, the stories that go with it. Your feet find the path again, and you walk. Section 14. You move on, the cool weight of the herbal pouch resting comfortably in your pocket. The streets are even quieter now, just the soft hush of wind sliding between walls and the occasional rustle of a date palm shedding a dried leaf. You pass shuttered homes, closed market stalls, and empty courtyards where only sleeping cats seem to stir. But just when you think the town has drifted entirely into dreams, you spot it. A flicker of lantern light, a gentle clatter of clay jars, and the low hum of human conversation. You follow it, curiosity winning over fatigue one more time. You've arrived at a storeroom, not for public display or elite parties, but for day-to-day living. Here's where the ice ends up months later, long after the harvest. And not just ice. Everything cool-worthy, dried fruit, medicinal pastes, cooling water jars, even preserved lemons that look more like fossils than food. The door stands slightly ajar and you slip inside. It smells like earth and dust and dried figs. A young man stands barefoot on a straw-covered floor, organizing stacks of storage jars. Each is sealed with wax or cloth and marked in careful ink. He looks up, gives a nod, and goes back to work. You're clearly welcome. Or invisible. Either works. You notice that this Yakhchal is still working, long after the ice fields were cleared, long after the camel trains came and went. The cold inside isn't sharp, but it's persistent, steady, like an old habit that refuses to melt. You crouch next to a stack of baskets filled with pale green limes and half-dried herbs. Even now, the leaves are fragrant, preserved better here than they ever would have been in the open air. And nearby, a flat slab of marble rests atop a stone basin. You touch it. Cool. The temperature difference is subtle but unmistakable. Historians still puzzle over just how long these Yakhchals could keep things cold. Some say into the heart of summer. Others claim well past it, especially in tandem with underground qanats. The truth probably lies in between. But there's no doubt they worked far better than they had any right to. A fringe story floats to mind. A British traveler in the 19th century reportedly stumbled into a village in southern Persia where the locals served him chilled melon in August. He didn't believe them until they let him walk barefoot into the Yakhchal. His reaction? It was like stepping into the lung of the moon. Whatever that means. You wander deeper into the storage chamber. In one corner, there's an old wooden chest with scorched lettering across the top. The man notices your gaze and smiles. He walks over, lifts the lid carefully, and reveals a pile of wrapped textiles, damp cloth bundles that smell faintly of vinegar and thyme. Wraps for fever, he says. For children. Or men who dream too much. You wonder what category you fall into. Then he takes out something even more curious. A small clay device, like a perforated bowl with a hollow stem. He pours a few drops of rosewater into it and places it in the air shaft. As the air flows, the scent begins to spread, fresh and cool. A low-tech air freshener with a high-end effect. You sit on a nearby crate and listen. To what? Everything. The wind whispering through the shaft, the faint sound of dripping water, the scratch of straw under shifting jars, the kind of noise that lulls instead of irritates. The man says something else, more to the room than to you. If you can keep the cold, you keep the calm. It's simple, but it sticks. You run your hand along the inner curve of the dome, and it feels like the surface of time itself. Smooth, cracked, and quietly persistent. So many generations must have knelt here, sealing jars, packing ice, placing faith in straw and stone. This isn't a palace or a temple, but in some ways, it's more powerful, because this is where history lived. Not in battles or royal decrees, but in the daily work of keeping things cool. So your food doesn't spoil, your child's fever doesn't rise, your sherbet doesn't turn to soup before the poem is over. You stand to leave. The young man doesn't stop you, just gives a small wave, already back to sorting his bundles. As if your visit were expected. Maybe it was. You step outside. The door closes with a soft scrape. The wind tugs at your sleeve again, as if to remind you. You've seen most of it now. The magic, the machinery, the mystery. The frost inside clay, and behind that door, the cold carries on. Unbothered, undramatic, unbelievably brilliant. Section 15. The last stretch of your journey winds gently back toward the open edge of the desert. The stars are low now, some already vanishing behind the distant mountains. The sky has shifted from obsidian to soft blue velvet. The kind of color that means dawn is thinking about it, but hasn't quite committed. You walk slowly, deliberately. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because your feet have learned the rhythm of this place. Slow is not lazy here, it's wise. Ahead, the Yakhchal glows faintly under the remaining starlight. It's the same one you first explored, but now it feels different, familiar. You circle it one last time, dragging your hand across its ancient plaster skin. It's colder now, maybe just in your memory, or maybe because the night has given all it could. You lie down on a woven mat nearby, staring up at the dome, then beyond it, to the sky. The quiet here is unlike any other, layered, soft, but never empty. It's filled with the weight of time, with whispered conversations between engineers and poets, between camel drivers and spice merchants, between the men who stored the ice and the women who served it in silver cups at garden feasts. You think back to the people you met, builders stomping straw, cooks shaving sorbet, healers stirring chilled syrup, priests lighting sacred flames. All of them connected not just by place, but by the same impulse, to shape the heat, to bend the desert gently into something livable, beautiful, even sweet. Fringe fact before you drift off. Some modern Iranian towns still use restored Yakhchals, not as novelties, but as functioning tools, storing dairy, fruits, even saffron during scorching summers. A legacy not frozen in time, but still chilling in it. Historians still argue whether the greatest invention of ancient Persia was political, philosophical, or architectural. But you know the answer now. It's this dome, this breath of frost in the heart of the sun. The wind rises, just a little, and for a moment, you feel the whole desert exhale, cool, measured, calm, like it's tucking you in. Word count, 1032. Wind down, 300 words. You're still lying there on the cool mat beside the ancient Yakhchal, the sand barely whispering beneath you. The sky has softened to a pale gray now, and the edges of the world blur into a gentle fog. There's no rush. The sun is waiting, politely, just out of view. Your body is still. Your thoughts, once spinning with images of wind catchers and iced fig syrup, begin to quiet. The wind sighs across your skin, not cold, not warm, just present. A reminder that the earth keeps breathing, even while you sleep. You imagine the Yakhchal behind you, its quiet bulk holding cold like a secret, keeping time in a language of frost and straw. It doesn't care who you are. It never did. It just holds and holds and holds. There's something deeply peaceful in that. A kind of strength that doesn't shout. A kind of history that doesn't demand attention. Just mud, egg white, and goat hair, standing calmly against a world on fire. Now your breath matches the rhythm of the desert. Slow, gentle, familiar. And if, by some stretch of dream, you ever return to this place, this sleeping village of cold and clay, it will still be waiting. Not frozen, not forgotten. Just quietly cool. Just quietly here. Good night, traveler.